Plants vs. Zombies 2, a game which has been speedrun and 100%ed many times. So I thought, why not combine the two and try to 100% speedrun it as fast as possible. But with a slight twist, I can use real money in order to help me achieve the fastest time possible. So come join me as I sweep through every world, obtaining extremely annoying achievements and spending my life savings along the way. We of course start within the tutorial where the timer first starts whenever we place our first plant down. But then we skip straight to day 4 as the first 3 days don't have much in them, and this level on the other hand gets us our first achievement when we blow up the zombie with a potato mine, which makes that the first of 75 achievements that we need to unlock, which the second achievement is obtained when we beat the tutorial, and we can finally move on to Ancient Egypt, where the first achievement of Ancient Egypt is obtained on day 5, where we have to let this raw zombie collect as many suns as possible, and you can tell that he's collected his max amount of sun when he stops collecting the other suns that are dropping, meaning that now we can get rid of him and collect the sun back from him and also get the achievement. The second achievement of Ancient Egypt is obtained on day 6, and we don't actually do anything special here. It's actually just seeing the gargantuar of Ancient Egypt. And there's a pretty decent amount of achievements like this that you obtain just from playing the game normally. But then there are those that we have to go out of our way and sort of sacrifice some time on our timer to get. And as we made our way to day 7, you might be thinking that we're losing time as I haven't bought anything yet, but that's actually on purpose as we're not allowed to yet enter the shop. But thankfully, as we defeat day 7, the shop opens up right after. And by the looks of my screen, you can probably tell that I made a purchase. But before I get deeper into the explanation of the purchases, I do have to explain that putting out this explorer's torch was an achievement. And as day 10 plays out, let me quickly mention all the purchases I just made. First and foremost, I spent $50 on coins, which I'll explain the usage of in a little bit. But next up was this gem/coin pack, and this was mainly purchased for the gems, which then the gems helped me unlock the fire pea shooter. We next spent $5 each on gold bloom, power lily, grape shot, imitator, cold snapdragon, and electric blueberry, which again I'll explain as we go through this challenge. But there was one more purchase that I made in this area, and that was the $3 monthly ad block. And this one's kind of just a necessity because if I don't get it, I constantly get ads every couple levels. I'm not gonna lie, this monthly ad subscription thing is probably my least favorite thing that's ever been added to PvZ2, and Vampircini exists. But that aside, this was the last of my purchases that we made at this point in the game, which already brought the total up to $88. And if you hadn't noticed in the background, day 10 we got another achievement, which was not letting the Tomb Raiser get down a single gravestone in the entire level. And that finishes off every achievement that we can get in Ancient Egypt besides one, which is beating Ancient Egypt itself, so we skip straight to the boss. And this is actually where the coins come into play. To help me go faster, they're used on buying plant food and power-ups to take down the bosses faster, which actually leads me into another thing that I need to mention, and that's that I had some semi-rules where I couldn't just spam power-ups throughout the entire game, and I couldn't abuse the leveling system either. And this wasn't because I was against him or anything, but if you remember, a while back I did a video where I tested out how many power-ups it would take to beat all of PvZ2, and I learned that while kinda trying to maximize the power-ups, it still took 2,566 of them to beat the entire game, which the total coin cost came out to 2,630,450 coins. And looking at the best coin offer and converting that coin amount into real dollars, it comes out to about $750. And that's while trying to maximize the power usage. And so if we're not trying to maximize it at all, we'd easily be over $1,000 spent. And I'm not gonna lie to y'all, I don't got it like that. So you can think of this video as an affordable optimization, but it's still not affordable as $91 on a single game is still pretty insane. But for science, it must be done. And as we made it to Pirate Seas, the first achievement is obtained on day 2 where this kernel pole butters the seagull zombie. And that's basically it for that one. With the second achievement of Pirate Seas obtained on day 4 where we have to have 10 snapdragons on the map by the end of the level. And this type of challenge is where one of the plants that we bought, which is the imitator, comes in handy because it allows you to bring 2 of the plant that you need to get down, making it much easier to get the designated number. And so I was able to ensure that I had 10 snapdragons down by the end of day 4. The third achievement in Pirate Seas is another gimme, which is just going against the gargantuar of the Pirate Seas. The fourth achievement, however, can be a tough one in normal gameplay, but since we have the cold snapdragon and grape shots, we can actually get it much easier. And basically the achievement is destroying the pirate captain zombie before its parrot can fly out. And you'll see it right here, a pirate captain comes in and my cold snapdragon slows it down and I'm instantly able to use a grape shot on it before the pirate flies away. For the fifth achievement, we have to bring in a coconut cannon because because the goal is to destroy an imp cannon with our own coconut cannon. And so as soon as this coconut cannon recharged up, I shot it and took down the imp cannon that was in his path, which now leaves us to the final achievement of the Pirate Seas, which again is beating the Pirate Seas itself. And the tactic this time is constantly just plant fooding the snapdragons, as it's basically the highest damage dealing plant that we have. So with the help of some normal coconut cannon shots and the plant food of the snapdragon, I was eventually able to deal enough damage to the plankwalker, and we'd beaten the Pirate Seas in about an hour and 34 minutes, which if you're curious is about 9 minutes faster than the world record pace. And you might be thinking that's not really that impressive, which I agree with, but we do have to take into account the fact that we're going out of our way to get every single achievement. So in a way, it's kind of completely different than normal speedruns. And of course, mine can't officially count since I did spend real money, and that's usually not allowed. But yapping aside, we do get our first achievement of the Wild West on day 1, which is planting a walnut on the minecart. So it's a pretty easy one. The second achievement you don't have to think much about, and you kind of just get it normally while playing, because on day 8 it's a conveyor level, and the achievement we're going for is getting 5 peas in a pod in the pea pod. Oh, and the pea pod has to be on top of a minecart, which of course you can see right there. The third achievement of the Wild West I could have gotten a little earlier on day 10, but it kind of slipped my mind. But thankfully day 14 is basically the same thing, and we don't lose any time on it. But the achievement in question is frying the chicken zombies using the lightning reed. So again, a pretty simple one. And this takes us to the second to last day of the Wild West, which is day 24. And again, this one could have been done earlier, but I kind of just forgot to. And the achievement for this one is kind of interesting, but not really. And it's planting down 5 tall nuts in a single level and then having a plant food on all 5 of them. So the strategy here was of course bringing in the power lily that we brought and then also using the imitator on it so that we can guarantee that we got all the plant food that we needed. I also didn't bring in the grape shot this time because it's usually the plant that makes the level go by much faster. And since we needed to stall out time to get the tall nuts down, I just decided that the grape shot wouldn't be a good pick. And as you can see up front, I had 5 tall nuts down and all of them were plant fooded, which now leads us to the last achievement of the Wild West, which is beating the Wild West. And we have some pretty powerful choices on this level, like the winter melon pole and the normal melon pole. But the main plant that we want to be plant fooding is the pea pod, because its plant food for some reason deals an insane amount of damage. And so after about a minute and 30 seconds, I used one last power up and defeated the zomboss, unlocking the key for the Frostbite Caves at about 2 hours and 30 minutes. For the Frostbite Caves, the first several levels, we don't do much, just play the game normally, placing down my cold snapdragons, and then grape shotting whenever zombies like the bucketheads or coneheads come in. And that's actually the main strategy that I use throughout this entire run, because in terms of plants that you can buy, cold snapdragon is probably the most powerful because one, it slows down zombies a lot and deals a pretty decent amount of damage, and even better, in the Frostbite Caves, it can't get frozen by the windstorms, which actually also might confuse you as to why I brought the fire pea shooter in. And the fire pea shooter exists to warm the sun producers in the back. Well, of course, for levels that have the windstorms. And like I mentioned, the grape shot is mainly for the tankier zombies that take the cold snapdragon longer to take down. And if you're unfamiliar, the grape shot is basically a powered up version of the cherry bomb. It deals more damage in a 3x3 radius, and it has the grape shots that kind of go all across the map, damaging the zombies that are too far forward. And one of the last integral parts of the strategy that I haven't mentioned yet is the gold bloom. The gold bloom is important because it gives you a very strong start, allowing you to have a pretty decent amount of sun to get down sun producers faster and also get down your cold snapdragons as fast as possible. And since the level progresses on how fast you take down the zombies, getting the cold snapdragons down as fast as possible makes the level go by much faster. But you might have noticed on this level that I actually didn't place the cold snapdragon down in the most optimal position, because on this level we actually have to take advantage of the windstorms, because there's an achievement where we have to thaw out 13 ice blocks using the hot potato. And since day 11 is a very long level with some pretty consistent windstorms, I knew that this level would probably be one of my best chances to get that achievement. And it was actually the reason I was planting down so many sunshrooms in the back, because I didn't really need them for sun, I just needed them to get frozen by the windstorms so I could later thaw them out using the hot potatoes. And throughout the level, as all my plants got frozen, I was constantly just using the hot potato on them until I got the 13 ice blocks thawed, which actually ended up being much easier than I expected. And then we just had to beat the rest of the level. The second achievement we get from the Frostbite Caves is on day 13, and it's the one where the Gargantuar of the world appears. The third achievement for the Frostbite Caves we obtain on day 17, where we see the ice pusher zombies, and basically our goal is not letting them get past the 4th column from the right. And with the help of the grape shots, cherry bombs, and the cold snapdragons, this isn't very difficult to do, leading us to day 22, where we get the second to last achievement, where we're introduced to the weasel hoarder zombie, and our goal is to not let the weasels get over the redirection pads. And because we have the cold snapdragon and its infinite pierce, minutes, the weasels didn't really stand a chance, meaning we'd made it to the last level of Frostbite Caves and we'd get the last achievement by beating Zomboss. And the main strategy for beating the mammoth is just spamming the flame power up, because for some reason it just deals an insane amount of damage, and we were able to beat the boss in about a minute, unlocking the key for Lost City at 3 hours and 37 minutes. And for the Lost City, we get our first achievement on day 2, where I first imitated the red stinger, because the achievement is getting a red stinger down in every tile in the back 2 columns, which is honestly a pretty easy one to do because a red stinger itself is very powerful and can defeat the zombies, and we don't even need the cold snapdragon. And for the second achievement in the Lost City, I left out the cold snapdragon again, because to obtain this one, we have to make sure that the shovel zombies aren't able to shovel any of your plants. And since the cold snapdragons don't have very long range, it can be a little risky to bring them in, so instead I went mainly with the lightning reeds. Since spamming them, they do a pretty decent amount of damage and they have very long range, which allowed us to beat the level without getting shoveled. The third achievement we obtained on day 12, and it's the level where the Lost City Garg appears. So again, a pretty simple one. But day 17 of Lost City is where something pretty cool happens. It's actually the single level where we get the most amount of achievements in, and it's mainly due to the imp tent zombies. I'm going to quickly mention all 4 of the achievements that we unlock on this single level. The first of which is we have to let 3 imps place their tents and then still win the level. The second achievement is that we have to push back 6 zombies using 1 chard guard. The third achievement is that we have to freeze 20 zombies using 1 iceberg plant food. And the fourth and last achievement is stunning 10 zombies using 1 chili bean. And kind of putting the achievements into perspective, you can probably tell why this is the one where we unlock all 4 of them. Since we're already forced to get down the tents, it means that we can let the zombies coming out of the tents build up. First, getting the achievement for the iceberg lettuce where we freeze 20 zombies using 1 of its plant foods. And then second, getting the achievement for the chili bean where it stuns 10 zombies. And lastly, getting the achievement for the chard guard where it pushes back 6 zombies with 1 flick. And after getting all 4 of the achievements, since I hadn't brought in any attacking plants, I had to use my power-ups to get rid of the zombies. And just like that, we had spent 4 whole minutes on this one level. But it was worth it since we're able to get 4 of the more annoying achievements out of the way, leading us into day 26 where we have a pretty easy achievement. And if you look to the top left, you'll notice that I brought in the gold tile and imitated it, and that's because we have to plant down 5 gold leaf tiles in 1 level. So that's exactly what I did, and you're seeing 6 here because there was 1 already in the map before we started, and the ones that are already planted don't count. And now we'd made it to the last level of the Lost City, since this was the last achievement that we had to get for the world. And at first I was having to use the snowball power up to deal damage to the gondola because the red stinger and the key don't deal an insane amount of damage to the boss. But then thankfully the conveyor did give me a bonk choy, so I was able to plant down the bonk choy using its plant food power, but also using the snowball power up to deal double damage to the gondola. And then finally, after about 2 minutes, we defeated the gondola, unlocking the key for the far future at about 4 hours and 42 minutes. And even though we lost some time on that one level, compared to the world record run, we're actually 30 minutes ahead of it. And that's because the harder the worlds get, the more useful our premium plants actually become. Since in the normal run, they can't use any premium plants, so they don't have the grape shot to finish off the levels quickly. They end up taking longer and longer since the zombies get more and more difficult. But in the face of grape shot, the zombies of course are basically the same. But moving on to the achievements for the far future, we unlock our first one on day 2, where basically all we have to do is make sure that we don't plant a plant on top of the power tiles, and we're pretty easily able to do that. The second achievement is unlocked on day 8, and it's the Gargantuar one. The third achievement unlocked on day 10 is pretty cool, and at first glance it can seem difficult because we have to use blower on 30 jetpack zombies, and it's pretty rare to see that many jetpack zombies in a single level. But there is a strategy to pretty easily get this achievement, and that's making use of the Discotron 3000 zombie, because it spawns in 4 jetpack zombies every so often, and you can just use a blower on them immediately. And you can see that I had my snapdragons pretty strategically placed so the Discotron didn't get defeated. And basically I let it get all the way to the end using the blower at every chance that I got, and eventually I was able to get to that 30 mark, which then allowed me to use grape shots on the final wave alongside the cold snapdragon's plant food. The fourth achievement you can unlock on every level, and I chose it to do on day 15 for no particular reason, but basically you have to use an infinite and then let the zombies eat away at it 2 times and then let it regenerate 2 times. So at first I let the zombies in the top lane eat away at it, and then after it regenerated there was a conehead in the top lane who took it down for a second time, and then it regenerated. And after the achievement was done, I was able to use my attacking plants on that top lane to get rid of the zombies. We unlock our 5th achievement on day 17, and you don't really have to do much because you're kind of just forced to get it. And basically we have to use 500 sun on a magnifying grass. And like I mentioned, since we're forced to use the magnifying grass on this level as our only attacker, we get way over that 500 sun use. introduced. The 6th achievement for Far Future is actually pretty cool and semi-RNG based because it involves the sun bombs that fall down on a couple of levels and the cone mech. And what we have to do is defeat the cone mech using a sun bomb. So the main strategy here was dwindling the cone mech's health down using the cold snapdragon in a far placed grape shot, and then as soon as a sun bomb got close to it, I tapped on it and it took down the cone mech. And thankfully RNG was on our side as the sun bomb fell down exactly where we needed it, and I was able to finish off the rest of the level using the electric blueberry for the gargantuars. And I'm specifically mentioning that because the electric blueberry's main purpose was for the bigger zombies like the gargantuars, and even more specifically it was for levels like day 22 where we have to prepare our defenses. And in these levels I would basically spam down cold snapdragons to slow down the zombies, and then a column or two of electric blueberries in the back for the tankier ones. And this strategy honestly worked wonderfully, especially in the far future because we had so many tanky zombies like the gargantuars, cone mechs, and the football pushers. And this had nothing to do with an achievement, this was more for the speedrun aspect because it saved us a lot of time. And I thought it'd be cool and important to mention why I actually bought the electric blueberry. But this also leads us into the last level of the far future where we get the achievement for beating the far future. And this level is pretty cool because the zombot in this world has a ton of health, but we're given a lot of power tiles and some really strong plants like the laser bean and citron to work with. And their overpowered plant foods allow us to beat the level in about 1 minute and 10 seconds, unlocking the key for the Dark Ages at about 5 hours and 43 minutes in. The Dark Ages has a couple of pretty cool achievements, with the first one being on night 2 right after we unlock the puff shroom, because this allows us to imitate it, and then the goal is to get down 20 puff shroom and plant food them all at the same time. And that basically means you're just using one plant food on the puff shroom since they all plant food when you plant food one of them. So as soon as I got down 4 columns of them down, I quickly plant fooded them and got the achievement, which then leads us to night 5 where the jester is first introduced. And there's an achievement where we can't let the jester throw back any projectiles at our plants. And this one's actually pretty easy to do as the cold snapdragon's projectile can't be thrown back. And the only plant that we have in our arsenal right now that the jester can throw back the projectile of is the grape shot. So basically we just had to make sure that whenever the jester was on the screen that we didn't use a grape shot. And we're pretty easily able to get this achievement as well. The third achievement is obtained on night 10 where the Dark Ages Gargantuar is introduced. The fourth achievement we get on the level right after because this is the level that we get introduced to the wizard zombie. And similarly to the pirate captain achievement in the pirate seas, we have to make sure that the wizard zombie can't get any shots off. And using the cold snapdragon and grape shots, this was actually pretty easy to do. The fifth achievement in the Dark Ages is one of the cooler ones I was talking about alongside the puff shroom one, because our goal here is try and take off the helmet of a knight and then let the magnet shroom that took off the helmet deal with that zombie. And you'll see that we did it right there. And that's basically it for the normal achievements in the Dark Ages, meaning we had one last one, which was to defeat the dragon. And the main strategy for this boss was constantly plant fooding the fume shroom because it was just the best option that we had for dealing damage. And just like that, we'd completed the 7th world of the game, unlocking the key for the Neon Mixtape Tour at 6 hours and about 42 minutes. And I haven't really been mentioning the total achievement count that we've gotten so far. So if anyone's curious, we've gotten 46 out of the 75, meaning we have 29 more achievements left, which 25 of them we get within the next 4 worlds, but then there's 4 more achievements we have to unlock after beating all of the worlds. But the first one we unlock in the Neon Mixtape Tour is on day 2 where we can only use Fappy as our damage dealers. So my strategy here was to bring in sun producers, a Fappy that was imitated, and then power tiles alongside power lilies to plant food them, since that still counts as the Fappy dealing damage. And it was important that we did this achievement early on as the levels just get harder and harder in the Neon Mixtape Tour, and this was just the easiest option. The second achievement of the Neon Mixtape Tour is unlocked on day 4, and this didn't specifically have to be on day 4. I kind of chose to just do it early on and get it out of the way, which the achievement in question is using a magnet shroom to take the head off of a punk zombie. And using this one magnet shroom, we did this multiple times throughout the level. The third achievement is unlocked on day 10, and this isn't the normal Gargantua achievement that you might be expecting that we usually get on the conveyor levels. It's actually something to do with the time warp. And all we have to do is use the time warp as soon as it comes into the conveyor, because there's an achievement for using 3 time warps in one level, which this very easily could have just been done on any other level using an imitator. But since the game just gives us an insane amount of time warps in this level, this is kind of just the best option, and we don't really have to go out of our way to get it. The fourth achievement is unlocked on day 12, and this is the normal Gargantua one, which leads us into our 5th achievement of the Neon Mixtape Tour that we unlock on day 28. Because in this level, we go up against the boombox zombie, and similarly to the wizard zombie and the pirate captain zombie, we have to make make sure that this guy doesn't start playing his music. And compared to the other two, this one's actually much easier as the zombie doesn't start playing music until way later on. And just spamming down cold snapdragons with the occasional grape shot, this is very easily done. And so we move on to the boss of the Nimixip tour, which is the last achievement for this world. And for this boss, we actually have to be a little bit more strategic than normal, because if you look on the top right, we only have about 38,000 coins left, and we started out at about 170,000, meaning we'd been burning through those coins pretty quickly. And if we kind of just spammed our power-ups on this boss, we could go through all those coins in one level, because this one's pretty tanky as it has 5 bars of health. So the best option here is planting your cactuses in the back and then using the plant foods on them, because if you're unfamiliar, the cactus has a plant food that lasts until it dies, which means it can constantly just deal a pretty decent amount of damage to the boss. And even though using our coins sparingly on this boss led to it being about 3 minutes, losing a little bit of time here means that we can save more in the later worlds. And you'll see towards the end of this video that I should have been even more stingy with my coins in the previous worlds, but you'll see what I mean when we get there, because for now we'd unlock the Jurassic Marsh key at about 7 hours and 52 minutes. And the first achievement for Jurassic Marsh is obtained on day 2, where the blue raptors are introduced, and our goal is to not let them interact with any of the zombies throughout the entire level. And again, the main strategy here is just using the cold snapdragons to keep the zombies on that first tile, and then using the explosive like the cherry bombs and grape shots to deal with the zombies as quickly as possible. The second achievement we get on day 9, and this is a pretty cool one. Basically, if you look in the bottom lane, you'll see a pterodactyl carrying a zombie, and we just have to use a perfume shroom on it whenever it's carrying that zombie. The third achievement, again, a pretty straightforward gargantuar one. The fourth achievement is one of the more annoying ones where we had to use perfume shrooms on T-Rexes, and then the T-Rexes had to defeat 10 zombies within the levels. And day 21 has a pretty decent amount of T-Rexes, so we were able to get the achievement. The fifth achievement we obtain on day 24, and our goal here is to destroy 7 zombies using just one primal potato mine. And my strategy here was letting the zombies build up in the top 3 lanes using the primal walnuts, and then when I successfully got enough zombies in a 3x3 radius, I planted a primal potato mine in the middle. And it's a little hard to tell here, but there's 3 zombies in the top lane, 2 in the middle, and 2 in the bottom, which added up to 7. And this gets us to the last achievement of the Jurassic Marsh, which is just beating the Mechasaur. And similarly to the gondola in the Lost City, we were given bong choys, so I was using the combo of their plant foods and a couple of snowball powers to defeat the Mechasaur. But again, I was still trying to conserve my coins, so I didn't use too many of the snowball power-ups. And at about 9 hours, 1 minute, and 30 seconds, we unlocked the key for the Big Wave Beach. In the Big Wave Beach, we get its first achievement on day 5, and it's a pretty simple one where we just have to use Tangle Kelps to take down 10 zombies in one level. And since this level gives us a pretty constant stream of Tangle Kelps, and I can even use the plant food on the Tangle Kelps, I was able to get about 20 plus zombies with them. The second achievement I got for the Big Wave Beach is probably the most RNG based one and the scariest one for this run, because using one bowling bulb, we have to defeat 10 zombies. And this is basically only possible with the plant fooded bowling bulb. But even with the plant fooded one, you can try to sometimes line up zombies, but things like that will happen where you only get 5 to 6 of them. But luckily, I'd built up this trail of zombies in the top 3 lanes, and this one bowling bulb bounced perfectly enough to where I was able to defeat 11 zombies with that one bulb. And it's good that we got it there and got it out of the way early on, because it is one of the more stressful achievements. The third achievement is the gimme of the Gargantua level. The fourth achievement is also kind of a gimme on day 26, because the achievement states that we can only use banana launchers as our attackers for one level, but it's impossible to miss this one as day 26 literally only gives you banana launchers as your attackers on the conveyor. So we just played the level like normal, getting the achievement. The fifth achievement is unlocked on day 27, and normally if you're unfamiliar with a lot of the plants in the game, this can be a little difficult because the goal is to not let the fisherman zombie get a hold of any of your plants. And normally this would be extremely difficult, but as most of us probably know, if you plant food the infinite, the fisherman can't actually hook past the infinite's wall. So this semi-scary achievement becomes extremely easy. And so defeating the level without getting hooked a single time meant that we got the achievement, which leads us to the boss level and the final achievement of Big Wave Beach. And the main strategy here was just plant fooding the bowling bulbs because they do an extremely good amount of damage to the normal zombies and the boss. Oh, and I would also use the banana launcher's attack on the boss whenever possible. And we'd beaten the Big Wave Beach, unlocking the key for modern day at about 10 hours and 42 minutes. And within the modern day, we actually get the first achievement on day 1. Now, this isn't actually a modern day based achievement, and if you look to the left, you might think that my plant lineup is extremely weird, and that's because this achievement is where I have to have one plant from each different world. And if you look from top to bottom, the primal sunflower is from Jurassic Marsh, the cherry bomb is from Pirate Seas, the iceberg lettuce Goddess is from Ancient Egypt, the Sunshroom is from the Dark Ages, the Charred Guard is from the Frostbite Caves, the Red Stinger is from Lost City, and lastly, the Time Warp is from the Far Future. And there really isn't much strategy behind this. Basically, it's just important that we did it on day 1, so the level was the easiest possible. And for my attacker, I brought in the Red Stinger since it's decent, and the rest of my plants are basically just supporting plants. And beating the level meant that we got the achievement. The second achievement is obtained on day 3, and it's a pretty simple one where we just have to use a fire plant to get the newspaper zombies newspaper to light on fire. And this achievement's pretty difficult to miss as it's on a conveyor. Third achievement we get on day 5, and if you look to the left, I used the imitator on the moonflower because the goal on this level is having 20 powered plants by the end of the level. So I was just spamming moonflowers comboed with the nightshade, and by the end of the level we had 22 shadow powered plants. The fourth achievement we get on day 14, and it's where the gargantuar appears. The fifth achievement we get on day 21, and if you look at the map you'll see that I had a pretty weird placement of cold snapdragons kind of farther back than normal, and that's because this is the first level we see the all-star zombie on. And to get the achievement we have to make sure that the all-stars don't get any hits off on any of our plants. And the plan here is pretty straightforward, planting the cold snapdragons in the back to slow down the zombies if they get too close, but making sure that I'm using my cherry bombs and grape shots to take out the all-stars whenever they get onto the map. And though we did lose a lot of our plants to other zombies, none of the all-stars were able to get close, meaning we'd gotten the achievement. And this led us to the last achievement of modern day, which is this 3 boss battles. And there is a bit of RNG with these 3 boss battles as well, because you can't really choose what bosses you get to go up against. It's kind of a random selection of 3 from all the previous worlds, which the first one we got was the Wild West one, and this one's actually good since we get laser beams and citrons for our main damage dealers. The second boss battle we got a little unlucky as it was a Sharktronic, and for some reason the plant choice we get here is absolutely atrocious. It's basically plants from the Frostbite Caves, and none of them do a ton of damage to bosses, so I actually did end up spending a lot of coins on this level to use snowball power-ups, eventually defeating the boss. The third one we kind of got unlucky again, and it was the boss from the Neon Mixtape Tour, but this was still better than the Sharktronic because we're given cactuses to work with, meaning we can actually deal some decent damage to the boss. And though we did get semi-unlucky with the bosses, we also got lucky in the way that we didn't have to go up against the Far Future one, because that one for some reason has an insane amount of health, and in the normal Far Future we're of course given the citrons and the laser beams to deal with it, but since in the modern day it's kind of random what plants you get for the bosses, we don't have those heavy hitters for the Far Future boss, and that one can take forever to deal with. So overall I'd say our RNG was decent, and better yet we beat the final boss at about 12 hours and 15 minutes. Well, that's at least what it should have been, because for some reason the boss kind of just glitched out here for a solid 30 seconds, and I thought I got soft locked, but thankfully the taco with the waffle appeared, meaning we technically beaten all of the worlds in 12 hours, 15 minutes, and about 30 seconds, which if you're curious is about 37 minutes faster than the world record. But of course they didn't have the pay to win aspect, and technically we're not done yet as this is a 100% speedrun and we haven't 100% of the game, and we still have to tackle my least favorite part of the entire game, which is the vase breaker levels. And before we get too far, let me explain the 4 achievements that we're going for within the vase breakers. First and foremost, we have to get level 30 in the endless vase breaker mode, and then the final 3 achievements in the vase breaker are basically beating the Ancient Egypt pack, the Pirate Seas pack, and the Wild West pack. And to guarantee that we can get to level 30 in the endless, we do make use of a glitch, because if you're unfamiliar, the vase breakers have their own 3 different power-ups, and the important one is this butter one, which you unlock after beating the Egyptian challenge pack. But for some reason, if you don't unlock it and you just start playing the endless mode, the butter power-up ends up just being free for the entire duration. And if you're curious as to what it does, basically you can use it to butter one zombie on the screen, and it's extremely important for the gargantuars, because as you progress through the levels from 10, 20, and get closer to 30, the number of gargantuars get bigger and bigger. And within the vase breaker, your arsenal of plants is basically the same in the endless mode, where you have repeaters, bok choys, 3-peaters, split peas, walnuts, and potato mines. And every vase breaker level also gives you 50 sun, and if you get into a pickle, you can use 150 sun to buy a cherry bomb. Oh, and like normal endless mode, your plant food carries over from level to level, so you're gonna make sure you're saving them up for dire situations. And I'm not gonna lie, there isn't much interesting stuff that happens within the vase breakers, because it's basically the same thing over and over again, with only the exception of the number of gargantuars increasing. And it took me nearly an hour to beat wave 30 of the endless, which after beating I immediately exited and entered into the Egyptian challenge pack. And I'm not gonna lie to y'all, these last 3 challenge challenge packs were the one thing that I didn't really practice for or even prepare for in any way. I kind of just assumed that they'd be extremely easy, and if things got too rough that I'd be able to use my coins on plant food, but for some reason within the challenge packs you can't buy plant food, and the only thing you can buy is the power-ups, which the Egyptian challenge pack itself wasn't too difficult since we still had the infinite butter, but you're going to start to see how important that free butter was within the Pirate Seas and the Wild West pack, because I'm not even joking, within the first 2 levels of the Pirate Sea Vase Breaker I burnt through about 7,000 coins. Now this was an awful decision, and instead of just wasting my coins I probably should have just restarted the level and gotten a better start, but I was kind of just going with the flow. And I mean, I tried to do a little bit better on the third one, but I still ended up spending like 3,000 coins. And the Wild West showed me that these decisions to spend all those coins was definitely very bad, because for some reason the Wild West levels give you the most minimal amount of plans to go against the zombies. Like for example, the first one only gives you 4 split peas to work with, which of course I had no previous knowledge of, and since I didn't make use of the minecart, it kind of just left one lane open in the very top, making it impossible for me to win. So I actually had to restart here. And at my second attempt of this level, I'm not gonna lie, I don't even know what I was doing. I kind of just spammed all the pots and then realized I was kind of screwed again. But you do have to remember that I was about 13.5 hours into the run, so I wasn't my normal self. But for my third attempt, I did take a little breather and made sure to go a lot slower, because I realized that for this level, the slower I went, the better my time would be. And finally, after about a grueling 4 minutes, I was able to defeat this level. But things were only about to get worse, because 1, we only had 2,000 coins left, and 2, the second level was named Chicken Skewers, guaranteeing that we're about to go up against chickens. And with the use of a couple of butter, things were actually going pretty well, but then this happened where this piano zombie didn't die and ended up taking out my spikeweed, and then I got very unlucky where a chicken wrangler spawned right in that lane that I just lost the spikeweed in. And though I got a second spikeweed, I panic placed it in the top lane because a zombie was getting pretty far there, which made it to where chickens made it to the end in the bottom middle lane, because my melon pole just wasn't able to deal with them. And even worse, we only had 270 coins left, but I was desperate and had an idea. I'd remembered that I hadn't visited the Zen garden yet, and normally you're given gems and forced to grow a marigold, which actually gives you some coins. And using my remaining gems, I actually grew 2 more marigolds, which got me to 1,700 coins. And so I made it my way to the second level again, hoping and praying that this was enough coins to defeat this level. But then for some reason, I kind of got the luckiest start that I'd ever gotten in the Vase Breakers, basically getting every plant that I needed before I even got a single zombie. And because of this, the chickens became irrelevant as I had a way to deal with them in every single lane, and we actually beat the level only having to use 1 butter power on this one zombie in the top lane because I got a little too close. This was definitely a pretty good win, and it saved us some coins for the last level. But now of course we've made it to that last level, and if you remember correctly, the thumbnail and or the title say that I spent $91 on this run, and thinking back, I've actually only spent $88 so far, meaning we actually still had one more purchase that I was forced to make, and that was actually on this very final level, because again we're given a very minimal amount of plants to use against the zombies, and I just kept getting these steel plated zombies over and over again, and my plants just didn't deal enough damage, so I had to constantly use the butter power up. And eventually, after a couple more unlucky vases, I completely ran out of coins, and nearly 14 hours into the run I was getting pretty desperate and did not want to play this level again because I felt like I was going crazy at this point. But I still had hope, as the vases could be nicer to me now as we'd gone through a lot of the tanky zombies, so there's a chance that we actually saw some easier ones. But the game had other things in mind and sent the tanky zombie literally right next to the end. And this guy actually could have beaten using the plant food, but I wanted to check the other pots if they had more tanky zombies, and the one right underneath had a bucket head. And at this point I had a decision to make. Do I restart or spend more money? And of course I was at my wit's end, so I did end up spending more money buying the $3 pack, which gave me 5,000 coins. And thankfully this 5,000 coins was enough that I could just constantly butter the zombies and at last defeat the zombie, meaning as soon as we collected the reward we had gotten our 74th and last achievement. And you might be thinking, I had mentioned that this game actually has 75 achievements, and you're right, but there's one achievement that's impossible to get, and that's the one where you have to beat the Yeti on a random world, but for some reason the Yeti just doesn't exist in the game anymore, meaning our final time for this entire 100% was 13 hours, 43 minutes, 12 seconds, and 28 milliseconds. And technically, since I don't think anyone's going to be spending this much money for this game, this is an unofficial world record. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time. Okay, bye bye.